Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hi there. I am so excited to introduce to you today my beautiful friend and soul sister, Shannon Kaiser. She is the best-selling author of 5 books, an international life coach, speaker, and retreat leader. Shannon helps people trust and believe in themselves so that they can live their highest potential. Shannon has been named a top woman to watch in wellness by Mind Body Green and your go-to happiness booster by Health Magazine. In her new book, Return to You, Shannon shares her 11 spiritual lessons to finding unshakable inner peace, a complete guide to her most effective strategies for tapping into your innate wisdom and stepping into your true power. Welcome, Shannon.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here with you again.
I'm so happy. And so she's saying again. So for those of you who don't know, Shannon was one of our first guests in our podcast last year. She is on episode 2. So you can, after this one, go back and listen to that one and get even more good goodies from her. So first and foremost, congratulations on the best-selling of the new book, because this is so amazing.
It is amazing. It came out recently and it's taken on a life of its own. And, even when I wrote it, it had a life of its own. It's very different in a beautiful way, the process it took me through. And now it's all about inner peace. And I think now more than ever, that's what we're all needing, wanting, but it's return to you. So it really is about coming back to your true self, freedom from fear and worry, all the stuff that's happening outside of us. Let's get rid of that and come back to us.
Exactly. So share with me, Shannon, how did your new baby return to you? How did she start?
Yeah, I call her my baby too, because it's a very special project, but it actually started, I call them pivotal moments. We have these moments where our life is really radically changed. And if we're aware and kind of, it's a spiritual journey for many of us, a spiritual awakening. But for me, it was this pivotal moment. I was traveling for my last book, Joy Seeker, which is all about seeking joy, being happy, being out in the world. But I was on book tour and I'd come home from these events. And although I was really practicing, what I was teaching, I did feel joy. I started to have these panic attacks. I was overwhelmed with fear. I started to break out in cold sweats, and my inner voice, the ego, not even my inner voice, the ego was saying, who do you think you are to be in joy? The world is in such a desperate place. You can't be happy. There's so much, pain out there. It was so nasty. Now, I had a history of suffering from depression and anxiety several years prior, but I had healed myself through my spiritual journey and also in stepping into my purpose, doing the work I do. So interesting enough, this anxiety stayed with me for quite a while. And I recognized that it was a training ground, if you will, because I recognized we live in a school called Planet Earth, which is lesson 1 in the book. And I was taking myself through really a step-by-step process to discover what is inner peace truly. And I discovered it through the contrast. I couldn't, in Eastern philosophy, they talk, you can't know something if you don't know the opposite. So for me, my anxious and panic attacks led me to really understand what true peace is.
That is beautiful. Oh, thank you. And we had quite a little party here for a few minutes pre-show. And, I'm jumping up and down in my seat and I'm saying, I've read the book twice. I've gone through 4 highlighters. My world shifted after the first chapter. Dramatically, I would even say within the first chapter. And so the part that I want to talk about is in your book, you actually give permission. You give permission to not needing to be consumed by the world and the events and the media and everything that is around us, that is making us feel out of control, and we don't even realize it. And there's a moment in this chapter where you talk about you've gone out, you're going to, I think it was dinner with your friends, and you're sharing with them like, holy batshit crazy, the world is melting, I'm researching, I'm looking all this stuff because I want to know what's coming so I can be in control, i.e. I'm prepping. And I was like, shall I raise my hand and admit to being here too? Because I'm thinking being prepared is being in control, and this is a good thing.
Right.
And you came up and said, girl, no. So will you share why we think searching out all this information and needing to know what's happening and prepping, we think this is a good thing. Tell us all what it really is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that actually keep us stuck in this anxious state. And, you know, as you just shared, and as I share, I was prepping and doing all the research because I wanted to be prepared. And I knew that things weren't what they seemed like. Just looking out in the world, there's also a lot of fear mongering. We look out and they're going to pulls our attention all the time and says, look at me, believe me, do what I say. And a lot of times it didn't feel right. So I would do these, I call it doomsday prediction scrolling, you know, and it's a rabbit hole. You go deep, deep, deep down. There is no ending. What I recognized in this is it's driven from fear. It's, even though we're trying to be prepared and we're trying to really stay in control of our life, right? It's still, and we do this even in our relationships. We think of maybe worst case scenarios, or we think of, and that's what it was. I was thinking, what is the worst that can happen? So if it happens, I am good. I'm prepared. I got my emergency kit over here. I got all, you know, whatever it is we're preparing for. But the truth is that is an action taken in fear, and fear will breed more fear, as Paul Selig often says. So I had to look at my foundation. Even though I was like, I'm good, I'm in control, that is ego. My ego was wrapping itself around making me feel like I'm good. But it leaves you feeling like you're never enough. What you're doing is never enough. It causes animosity, stress. And so the real shift in the whole work of this book, and my goal, is to help us remind us that operating from love is our truth. And so I have radically shifted my life, you know, and it was funny because as you share in that story, I went out to dinner with some friends and they're like, how are you? And it was during 2020, you know, the whole COVID lockdowns, you don't see people for a while and then things open up and then they don't. So it was in one of those in-betweens. And I was like sharing, you know, oh my gosh. And I literally was going to bed with such anxiety. I was sharing, you know, there's so much going on. And they looked at me like I was some caged animal. Like I saw in their face that they were not in fear. And that's when I realized I'm trapped in my own fear and delusions of what might happen in the world. I think we all do this to some extent. The reality though is love is our director. And so I truly have found inner peace and operate from love now. I make all my choices in love. And I think that's the process we all want to go to.
I think that's so important. And when I read this, you know, it's so pivotal for right now because your mind is saying, well, I've got to get the kitty food because I can eat peanut butter, but what if they don't? So you're justify, right? Now you're justifying this. And after reading this chapter, I sat back and I literally apologized to God. And I said, I'm so sorry that I purchased so much kitty food and that I didn't have faith, that I lost my faith. I didn't realize I wasn't acting in faith.
I just got full body goosebumps when you said that, because that's similar to me. I went out and bought a whole bunch of dog food. And I think the whole idea, though, is we're operating from a place of trying to prepare. And as A Course in Miracles says, when you're operating from fear, it's a sure sign you're trusting yourself and not trusting God, not trusting source energy. And I like that you shared that prayer, because I think that's where I got to in my space too. And there's prayers I share in the book too, which is, you know, help me surrender and see the love that is here. You named it though. It's a lack of faith when we're trying to control, when we're trying to over prep. No, don't get me wrong. It's really important. You know, even in my conversations with God, it's like, if you feel safer having kind of an emergency kit in your garage, then please, of course, we want to do like a balance is what we're really getting at. I think the ultimate kind of end process or real flow is to align with God though, and really let that lead us, because faith is freedom from fear, which is a lesson in the book as well. Right.
Which is another incredible lesson, which brings me to, out of the 11 lessons in the book, do you have a favorite?
You know, I love this question because everyone's my favorite as I'm reading it, but my true favorite, and you can tell as you've read my other books, is lesson 10, nothing real can be threatened. And the reason why, you know, I was on reading the book, I got to read the audiobook, and we were in the sound booth. I went to Sounds True, my publisher in Boulder. And I remember reading through the book, and the sound editors were all feeling more peaceful. And then when I got to this chapter, I had to take a deep breath in, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And he's like, yeah, with a chapter head like this, I see we're going deep. And it was just so funny because this chapter Nothing real can be threatened. Herein lies the peace of God is the full quote from A Course in Miracles. And it talks about the biggest war we are fighting is the war within our own selves. And it's a process of, I was fiercely independent for me. I still am. I like my independence, but it was I'm good because I didn't want to allow love in or allow myself to receive. So this chapter is about allowing yourself to really heal on the inside. And I'd be interested in hearing your take because you've read the book too. But that one to me, because I'm an author and because I'm on my own spiritual journey, was the deepest one for me to put, because I even talk about, near death experiences and people who cross over and come back. So I put all my beliefs out there, and I needed to share it though.
Yeah, no, there were, like in the beginning, my life completely shifted. And then I was deep and I had my notes and I'm doing, because you give good practical little assignments at the end of each chapter. And so I really went in, I was dedicated. I said, okay, I'm going in. And then when I got to that chapter and I was like, oh, as you said, we're going there. Okay, so this is another layer. So I went a little bit deeper. And you really, again, my soul sister, we spoke earlier. I said we were clearly in the same womb and separated at birth. You talk about, I got this. I don't need anyone. I'm Miss Independent. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, okay, there goes my hand again. Like 100%, not recognizing that is actually a trauma response.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering, if you could, dive a little bit into that, because there's a lot of us out there. One, we were actually bred, some of us because there was trauma that transpired that brought us to this place. And I think once we can shine the light, and you talk about this a lot in the book, if we can shine the light, then we can transmute the dark. We can understand it and work through it and allow the love in.
That's it. It's about allowing the love in. Sometimes this fierce independence, I'm good, I got it, whether it shows up in your business. For many years, I didn't even have an assistant. And it shows up in relationships, pushing people away. It also shows up in not asking for help. And I think we as women, empowered women, it's also cultural conditioning. Like, I got it, I'm good, I'm an empowered female, fierce lady, goddess of, my world. But the truth is, it's a trauma response in the sense that we're not letting love in, because allowing yourself to receive, whether it's help, whether it's support, whether it's even vulnerability from your relations and communications with others, that's getting us to a place of, we are protecting our heart because we don't feel worthy, but also because there's something in our past that made us feel like it's not safe. And so the most beautiful process, and that's why this chapter is my favorite, I think the deepest amount of healing can come when we truly piece ourselves back together. It's almost like we split away from ourselves. That's what I start the whole book with, is like that moment in my childhood where I split away. It was more important to fit into the world and be liked, even though it was a false version of myself, but something was missing. So this is coming back to you. And this chapter is where it brings everything back together. This it comes back to worth. And there's some questions. It's, you are worthy of love. You are worthy of being seen, of being validated, of being in this world, of getting support, because support is love. And this is the chapter where I say one of my favorite quotes is, acknowledgement is love. When you acknowledge someone, when you allow yourself to be acknowledged in the world, that's a form of receiving love. Mm-hmm. That's what we're all looking for right now.
Truly. I mean, this chapter really sat me down, me down, tears. And I thought, wow, okay. And, for listeners out there, if this happens to you, instead, I would say months ago or years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, why am I being so emotional about this? It was because I'm realizing, you know what, I've been healing, much like Shannon and everyone is. There's some work to do in this area. And that's a great, what a revelation when you can, get to that point and go, oh, okay. Wow, yes. These are tears of the inner child going, oh my gosh, you've hit on top of that golden nugget. Let's go there.
It's so safe. And that's the thing I talk about. It's the work, and the work can feel hard and scary, but that's why we stay anxious, depressed, worried, addictions stay in our life. But when we start to go into this, we realize it is safe and these emotions want to be expressed. So I like that you say that. And that's beautiful, because in this, there's a deep, profound awareness for us to step more fully into our life. And that means returning to us on all levels, all the pieces of us we left in childhood, that perhaps are still crying out for help and want us. It's a connection back to self. So yeah, that's definitely a process for us, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's safe.
It is beautiful. And your whole book is incredibly beautiful and incredibly safe. And everyone that reads it, I feel, will definitely be reading it at the right time, at the right place, and get exactly what they need out of it. And I was sharing, like, this is now the book that stays on my desk. This is like the Bible of remembering love, staying out of fear, and staying in alignment.
Yes. And that's beautiful that you say that, because I even organized the book in a way that I was wanting it. The book kind of talks to me as the author of how it wants to be laid out. As you see my other books, there's different ways, but I wanted to have life truths presented throughout the book. So you could just open up any book or any page and see like a bolded kind of, I've done this in other books, but the life truth is like the foundation. It's like, love is why we're here. Love is our truth. Peace is my truth. These are some of the life truths. And then the clear action steps. I am a big journaler and a mantra girl myself. So I wanted to put lots of different resources, because not everyone learns in the same way. So if you're a journal person, go to those journal questions. If you like the mantras and the prayers, these are your tools. There's quizzes in there. So that was a goal for me too. So I'm glad you're saying it's resonating and on your desk always.
100%. I mean, it's so well-rounded. And I was even saying pre-show, like not that I'll always read books, but this is, for the spiritual healing aspect and, healing on any journey that you're in. This book hits every aspect.
Yeah, thank you. I thought about that too as I was writing down. It's amazing how the book kind of informed itself. I take you through one lesson at a time, but each lesson works off the lesson previous. So it really is a journey, but more so it's an experience. And as I was going into the book, funny enough, I never had writer's block or anything, because whatever was happening out in the world was happening. There's a part where I talk about we have to go inward. If we don't go within, we go without. This is one of my other favorite chapters, because I thought it was going to be about meditation, but the truth is there was a natural disaster happening. I'm in Oregon, just outside Oregon, and there was wildfires, and we're a very wet climate. We don't experience that. And so for many days we had the worst air quality. The sky was blood orange. People were wearing like those hardcore gas masks you see in apocalypse movies. Like seriously, I was scared to go outside with my dog. And I started to fall into that, oh my God, the world is ending. But I caught myself and realized, wait a second, if you don't go within, you go without. Not only can I not really go outside right now, but with the COVID lockdowns, I had to be inside, all that. So it was one of those things where it's like our inner world is beckoning us to go in, because the outside world will not give us anything. And we've been living in a world and conditioned in years and ancestrals passed down to us that you need to be out here, chase, look like this, do this, believe this. It is fleeting. It is failing all of us. And so that's really why I wrote this book, because your inner world is your golden ticket. That's the true return to you.
It really is. And again, it just gives you permission to tune out so that you can tune in.
Yes,
tune into
that's exactly it.
And really just listen to yourself. And I'll say, after that first maybe after the first 2 chapters, I could have just read this in a day. But this is, for me, this was not a book to read in a day. I needed to savor. I needed to go within. And so I encourage people to take that time too. If you're like, oh, I want to read more, but I feel like I just need to sit here with it, please do. Because so much more radical shifting will transpire and come up for you in beautiful ways.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I thought about this book is about inner peace. It's the lessons to inner peace and how we can, but really it's a philosophy of life. It's a way of being. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of choosing love over fear. And moment by moment, we have this process, whether it is a relationship. There's a whole chapter about releasing relationships that are not aligned. I was going through a lot of relationship reconciliations because some of them, I didn't feel good. I felt like they were demeaning. I felt like they didn't respect or really support me. And I was doing a lot more for them. And I had to look at that. And that, again, was a tendency of me overgiving as a child because I wanted to feel worthy. I wanted to feel loved. So I'm going to overgive to you, even though you're not giving me anything back. So I talked through that process. And then there's also relationships that are serving us, or whether it's a natural disaster, or whether you're really having anxiety because of your future and the fear. And I will say that probably the one of my favorite chapters, just because it's the core of all the work I do, is your purpose is personal expansion. And from day one, even my coaching practices is all about getting into alignment with your authentic self, your true life purpose. Like, what are you here on earth to do? And, sometimes we feel like we don't have a purpose. And so that causes anxiety. So it's been a fun process to kind of look at the pivotal parts of our life that are causing worry and stress, and then creating a guide to say, well, okay, here's your go-to through this, you know?
And again, so excellent. And you touched on something really great that I'd like to turn around and go back to is, will you share the difference between your life purpose and your soul purpose?
Absolutely. Well, I believe all of us are here. Earth, as I talk about in lesson 1, is a big school. We are in a school called Planet Earth, and we live and grow and learn through the contrast. I truly believe we're here to go through things to help us return to what is truth, which is our love and our spiritual self. So we're spiritual beings, having a human experience. We've heard that a lot in the spiritual circles, but our life purpose is to grow and expand into more love, to understand what love is. Sometimes we think my life purpose is that job or that career, that accolade, that, when I first left my corporate and advertising, I was like, what's my life purpose? Oh my gosh, I'm a writer. That's it. No. I love writing. I see now. And I love being a coach and being here with you and having podcast chats, but that's not my purpose, right? That's where we fall into, because if all that goes away, then the ego is going to be like spinning out of control. But if we're doing things with love, then that's going to connect us. Whereas our actual soul has a different assignment. And this is really fun for me too, because in my private practice, I talk about the soul's journey. And there are a lot of ways that your soul may have elected, so to speak, raised their hand and said, I'm going to go to planet Earth and I'm going to learn. And one of them, there's a lot of different ones. There's maybe 8 that I go through. There's more, but one of them is like to learn how to heal karma, or to play out karma, whether it's from the past or to kind of make things right again. Another one is to play in the wonder of it all. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to name my website Play with the World, which you can also go onto for resources. But it's not just about playing and not taking things seriously. It's about really seeing the beauty through the contrast. And right now we're in a world that it looks crazy. If you're tuning into out there, then it looks like we're falling apart, and it's constantly social media, news cycle, wars. It's just not shootings. It's nonstop. However, there are so many beautiful things happening on the planet right now. There are so many beautiful opportunities. So it's about how to see the beauty in the darkness. There's some others too, but that's kind of, so it's really fun to know that your soul has a mission as well.
Right.
I'm interested in, when you were reading that list, was there any that resonated with you?
There were, and I wrote them down. So definitely the spirituality, the education, those definitely like stuck out for me. And then I thought, and then it was like sort of my ego was trying to be like, but what about like business or something? And I'm like, well, yeah, but this, if I'm really being honest, helping people and serving that's been my mission since day one. Yes. After Pilates school, it was like, if I can help one person to not feel pain, that was my mission. And so, and now it's, it just has snowballed into, like into the Pilates training, turned into the coaching, which turned into the podcast, which turned into just helping everyone to heal and empower themselves.
And I love what you say about that too, because it's like one thing leads to the next. And I think sometimes I see this in my practice, you too, probably, where people start out and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to get to there. I see myself coaching or writing books, but where I am is not there. And so we fall. Another thing that causes anxiety is this paralyzed space in between. But there is so much beauty in the in between, because that is the how is in the now. I often say, so what can you do right now? And as you said, you do one, and then it opens up a whole new possibility. But if you don't even take that action on that one thing, you will never see this realm over here that is available to us. It's almost like your future self or your true self, higher self, or the return to you, which I call your true nature, is guiding you. All we have to do is just keep showing up for that guidance and take guided action with love.
Right. And follow the synchronicities that you talk so much about, when we're really aligned and feeling that flow, and all of a sudden one turns into the other, and someone asks you to do this and you're like, oh, I would have never thought about that. Like I've done writing a long, long time ago, And I've only started coming back to that. I used to write consistently forever in magazines and this and that. And I'm like, well, where did that go?
Yeah.
And I love something that you also point out in the book. It's like, you never get lost. You don't ever go off track. You are exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And I think that's something too important. And sometimes something will go on the back burner and then you can come back to it. And there might have been a reason, like you had to go and learn or experience or have a traumatic event. You know?
Yeah. I think that's also a really important chapter. I talk about seasons of your soul. You know, I used to be, when I was diagnosed with clinical depression in 2009, I was in advertising, completely different career. And a lot of that was, I read the quote at the time by Jim Carrey, which is depression is your avatar telling you it's tired of playing the character that it's playing. And I read that and I was like, yeah, most of my depression is tied to me just doing what the world wants, not what I really want. So I started to go on a journey. And one of the biggest things that opened up for me was being an athlete. I was an athlete in high school. So I started doing triathlons, competing in half marathons and just traveling the world through my endurance events. And then when I started and left Chicago, moved back to Portland, I personally started to get very clear. I'm a book author and I want to coach and I'm starting this website. And as I did, the endurance athletes kind of stuff fell away, timing. And there was about 3 years where I was feeling really guilty for that. Like this was such a passion of mine. But then I started to understand the seasons of our soul. And that's why this chapter is so dear to my heart, because sometimes we try to hold on. It was unsustainable to hold on to that type of lifestyle as you're starting a business and trying to be an entrepreneur. Yes, it's possible, but on my personal journey, it wasn't. So the seasons of your soul is about honoring where you are. And sometimes we outgrow what we needed to grow into, but also most things do have expiration dates. And then also my favorite part, we often will come back to what is truly important. So I used to cook and bake when I was little with my mom, and I spent 20 years not doing it. And now for the past 9 months, all I'm doing is baking, cooking, giving all my goods to my neighbors and the homeless. My dad even said a couple of weeks ago, Shannon, you got to stop bringing us baked goods. Like our freezer is full, because I'm having so much fun with it. So it's about returning to you. What do you love to do?
I love that. And so how does that go into knowing the difference between your passion and hobby?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up. And I had to put this in the book too, because a lot of times we are passionate about something. And that's the number one question I start with is, what did you love to do as a child? And I work with people in my coaching practice, to find their purpose. And they're like, well, I absolutely loved, baking, but I don't want to be a baker. I don't want to have my own. That's a whole thing. And that's right, where you recognize that's a hobby. You absolutely love it. However, what happens is there's a directive from our heart that pulls you, and it pulls you forward. So for example, I had a coaching client who she loved making little characters out of clay. She did it all through childhood, and she grew, she was in her 50s. So her kids had gone off to school, and we went back to what she loved. And she said, I absolutely loved it. And that was, we discovered, is this a hobby or is this a passion, as in you want to turn it into a lifestyle and a business? And she started to make these characters, sell them on Etsy. Now it's her business, because here she is making ornaments and these clay things, and her child self is connected. So the distinguisher is, do I have a pull from my heart, or is it just something I enjoy doing to fill my time?
I love that you say that, because I'm a baker too. I grew up baking with my grandmother, and my mother was a baker, and I didn't for a while. And then I did, and I actually tried to turn it into a business at one point. Small, while I was doing Pilates, so that wasn't sustainable. And it wasn't.
Might be the timing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The timing wasn't great. And same thing. My family now is like, can you please stop? We're all gaining weight. No more goodies. Cause of course,
so you find a new group to give them to. That's my,
right.
That's
so i.e. I'm not baking breads. I'm baking muffins and cookies and cakes and all that. Yes.
I love it. We are such soul sisters.
We truly are. Yeah. It just makes me so happy. And it does. It takes me back to those childhood moments, which are so precious, to those.
And I think, that's the key. It's connecting you to the joy of the moment. And I've often asked myself too, I don't know if this is going to turn into something. I've actually started to, see little insights of maybe I do want to have a bakery someday. And that's the joy of the journey. We don't have to force, we don't have to push, maybe you and I open up a bakery down the road. That's one of the things where you don't know where life's going to lead you. You just connect to the joy and keep trusting the guidance. That's it. If we're not choosing joy, then we're not going to be able to move forward into the path that feels the most aligned. And so for you, just just baking now at night, that's joy. So we got to keep doing it.
Got to keep doing it. I love doing that. Or that, like the podcast. I mean, this literally, for me to say it came out of nowhere is not true. Like this was literally God, the divine, saying, this is what you're going to do, but not yet. And here's something I had never listened to a podcast. I didn't know anything about. And you're like, I love what I do. I love, meeting people like you. We would have never met, helping to share all of this to the listeners around the world. And that was my one thing in 2020. Is that how?
I remember you reached out. Yeah. Or we talked then. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was I knew that I was meant to make an impact and I needed to help spread light and joy on a larger scale. And I had been doing it all of my life in, brick and mortar Pilates studios or this or that. But it was like, no, Annie up girlfriend. And I was like, I don't know anything about this. And I just dove in and went for it. And I'm like, this has been such a blessing. Such a blessing.
That's so beautiful. And that's the key too, is to just dive into the wonder and the joy of, I think truly we are creators, human beings. I often say this and people are like, I don't write. I'm not a painter. Like I'm not artistic. And I don't mean create in that way. I mean, we create other human life. Like create is to have, if we're not creating, I think we become stale. And that's what's happened over the last couple of years too. Many people did stop creating, or the flip side is we dug deep in ourselves and realized, oh my gosh, I'm going to write that book. I'm going to start that podcast. And that's the activation. That's where, we're here. You can either fester in what's not going well, or you can step forward into creating what you want. And so that's what I love about you as well.
Oh, thank you. And that's what I love about you, my soul sister. Oh, I know tears. So let me ask you this. How do you stay peaceful in unknown and transitional times through life?
I think so the fear of the unknown is one of the biggest fears. Fear of not fitting in is another one for people. And that's why I addressed both of these in my first couple chapters, because so often it's terrifying because we want to have control, because having control makes us feel like we are in control and know that we can navigate the world. But in the unknown is where the biggest amount of growth happens. In the unknown is where the surrender can happen. And so how do we stay truthfully in peace through the unknown is through our faith. And it can be faith in a religious sense, but what I mean is faith in a connection to your higher self, to your future self, to the higher power that you align with. Faith in love is really what it's about. Because even I've traveled the world, all religions come back to love and love in one form or another, and we identify with what we reach for. So to me, the more, and I started to share this and I noticed something in 2020 and 2021, here we are in 2022, I noticed the people who fell into fear, and this is kind of a blanket statement, I don't mean it in that way, but the people who fell into the most fear were the ones that had the least amount of faith. And I have a whole side of my family who is very religious, and then another side who's not. And it was just interesting to kind of see the development, and not even with my family, but just with neighbors. And it could be faith in what you believe in, but to me, it's God, it's source energy, as I talk about divine love. And that's one of the main ways I was able to stay so grounded and connected through some of the most disturbing times we've faced as a culture, because I had a prayer practice, I had a meditation practice, I had a daily. One of the things for me was connecting to earth. I think there's an immense power in Gaia, the earth energy. So I would ground every day, which is taking your bare feet, if you have a backyard, or I live in a condo, so I went to the park and I just connected. And the energy you get from earth is healing. So these are things that I do daily, and I think we can all implement.
I agree. I mean, my non-negotiables are my walks in the morning and in the evening. It clears me to get ready for my day, and then I clear out my day by just going. And I say that my walks are also a form of meditation. That is when I get some of my most inspiring ideas or thoughts that come through, and it's gangbusters. It's just such an incredible time.
Yeah. And I like that you say that, because I think for me, meditation is not just sitting on a pillow, zoning out. When we're talking about inner peace, it's not being at peace all the time or being the Buddha under the tree and escaping life. It's about activating in each moment the peaceful awareness that is available to us. And so when you're walking, that's a form, when I was in endurance athletes, I would run a lot. That was my meditation. So doing what you love daily and making that a non-negotiable is really the key here. That's how we find more peace. That's how we find more joy.
Absolutely. Do you have, and is it fair to call it even a traditional meditation practice, or do you have Shannon's meditation practice?
I do a little bit of both. I don't have a every single day I'm going to sit in my chair and zone out kind of practice, but I make sure that I'm always kind of connecting inward, whether it's on a nature walk, sometimes even washing my hands and just really smelling like the lavender soap, like that's meditation. However, I do anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes a day I have guided meditation albums. Sometimes I listen to those. I like listening to soft music that will help me go inward. I have a Peloton app. I use those meditations quite a bit. So every day, minimum 5 minutes. Usually it works out to about 20 to 30 minutes a day.
That's great. Yeah. I love that. I do something similar. I have a Reiki music that I lay down to, and whatever comes in, just come. And sometimes I think I'm asleep, but I don't think I was sleeping, but I was somewhere in between worlds. And like that's why, and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a new day. Or you get up, I should say, and it's a new day, and it feels amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Another thing is during my self-care, like I love baths, love them. Those are almost non-negotiable. So I will do a meditation then. I'll put on some nice music. And so doing, putting these together is also, if we're looking for tangible tools, sometimes for example, if you're baking, doing a nice YouTube meditation along that, or listening to an audiobook, I think it's fun to build. It's a lifestyle. So you build it up, right? Step by step. How can you create a day that feels more peaceful and joyful? However, as I'm saying this, I think it's important to recognize, because I get this a lot in private comments and in coaching. A lot of times it's like, how can you stay in peace, right? When there is so much going on out in the world. And I think when we're talking about here, it's not about spiritual bypassing. It's not about ignoring the realities of the world. But before we got on, even we were talking about this, it's about being in a creator mindset and creating the world you want, and stepping into that place and doing what you can when you feel it's important and timely. So donating money to organizations that you feel aligned to, speaking your truth, using, your platform. But I think if we spend our days doom and gloom, focusing on the news, focusing on what's happening, looking out, then that is plummeting our energy and keeping us in a fear state. That's not serving anyone. So what we're talking about, I think, is important to recognize is it's really about coming back to you, because your natural state is of love. It's not of fear. And you don't feel good in that space. So why do we keep operating in that space? It's about changing our operating system to a place of truth, which is love. And our peace is our purpose, really.
Right. Truly, I believe that. Now, I know there's going to be a listener out there who at this point in time goes, all right, I want to call bullshit on both of you. Don't you watch the news? Don't you tune into the weather? Don't you do astrology? Don't you look at if the planets are in a hot shit mess? Like, come on, y'all. Don't you do all that?
Absolutely. I know. I think about that too. Yeah. So the thing that comes to mind first and foremost is, of course, but here's what focusing our attention on that is keeping us in a low vibration. So looking at it and being aware, and then I often say, turn your resistance into assistance, because so often we are resisting what is. There was a time, when I was in my doomsday predictions, I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a natural disaster. It's going to be this, more shootings, like now war. It's never going to end, because we are on planet Earth, and thinking that the Earth is going to look different is where we get caught up. So what we are actually here to do is to focus on how can we create a better life for ourselves and others? How can we help those? So if you're resisting what's happening, oh my God, the world's falling apart, right? I get it. I was there. Oh man, was I there? But it wasn't serving anyone. It was actually hurting the world, and it was keeping us in that state. So I say it's important to be aware, but more importantly, what can you do? How can you make a difference? So for me, I was joining, organizations that I believed in, starting to send money to companies that were important to me. And most important, I started to opt out of things that I didn't align to, unsubscribe from certain things, don't go on social media to certain pages. How do you feel after? If you feel, and I talk about this in the book, if you feel more worried, fearful, desperate, hopeless, these are things that are inducing more fear. Why are we choosing this? Let's shift into what makes us feel uplifting, united, hopeful, love, peace. There's a lot of that happening. And so it's just about where you give your attention. And I think the most important thing is to just ask, okay, well, what can I do? Because festering and feeling hopeless does nothing for anyone.
No, and you're actually sending mixed messages to the universe. You can't sit there and have a vision board and have a gratitude practice and in my opinion, and turn around and watch the news and not think your vibration is not going to lower. And when it lowers, all this beautiful practice that you just did is now kapooey.
Yeah. I think I'm just, thinking of people I know who do watch the news, and they do it because they say, I want to be informed. What we have to recognize too is the news in general is a game, if you will. I come from a background of advertising, so I understand. I also have a journalism degree, and I know that there's things called clickbait. There's their whole mission, and even Tony Robbins talks about this in his lectures too. Like, they are a marketing machine, and they know that fear keeps people locked in. So they're going to align their headlines. They're going to cover things. And also, I've kind of gotten to a place too where I even talk about it in the book. I don't really trust the news. I don't. And I'm pretty unapologetic about that, because we're not there unless you're physically there and you see it with your own eyes. Things can be manipulated, things can be photoshopped, things can be changed. And I think it's important to talk to people who are going through things and experience these and see how we can help. But the truth is, most of the media is not something I really align to.
Yes. And I know that that's something we both agree on. It's not, I don't. My mom will be like, she'll say, like, oh, did you know there was a tornado? She did this to me the other day. So how did you feel about the tornado that almost came here? And I looked at her and I go, what tornado? And she goes, do you not watch the weather? And I said, no, I don't.
Right.
I don't want, like, Mom, I don't watch the news. I just don't. Now, every once in a while, like if there's a certain rally or something and I'm wanting to tune into something, okay, fine. Because I know it's going to be uplifting, not because it's doomsday, but I don't watch the news. There are times where like friends will say, hey, like someone said something to me yesterday about something that was going on. And I said, I'm not really participating in this movie anymore. So I'm kind of good. That. Like, I know that God has a plan. I know we're all going to be fine. And hey.
And, I love that you say that too, because a lot of the things too, when I see it, and that's one of the reasons I had to write this book, because it's about step-by-step intuition development. And I think when your intuition is fully intact and aligned, we can connect into, does this feel true? And there are a lot of false flags out there. There's a lot of manipulation in the media. There's a lot of advancements in technology, like CGI stuff, like they can make people look like, you see movies lately, people look different. We're living in a world where there's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of illusions. And so the process, my mission, your mission, is to help us connect to love. God's love is here. And like you said, God's got this. I often say that too. In the book, I talk about that. Like, don't make any choice that is in fear. In the beginning, when I saw this happening, I was thinking, oh my gosh, do I need to like go move out to the forest and, get off grid? And me
too.
It's like,
me too. I was like, Mom, we need a house. We need a garden. We need a helicopter. We need a boat. We need to have all our exits covered. And she was just like, oh my God.
Yes.
But I was serious.
I was too. I'm with you, because I was going through that, and no amount of like panic can save us from that, except for recognizing that that is fear. But it's also, like you said, trying to be prepared. But truly, I had to stop myself, and I called my friend Summer Bacon and Dr. Peebles, and they said, don't make any choice in fear. Fear is going to create more fear. Recognize that you are always exactly where you're supposed to be. God is always going to put you right where you need to be on earth. And so to the person who's saying, why there's wars happening, how dare you talk about peace? I do hear that, but we are where we are because it's part of our own soul's journey, but it's also part of where God wants us. So what can you do with where you are and align and know that in each moment when you are connected to that source, that truth, God's voice will talk to you and let you know, okay, it's time to move. It's time to take a new job. It's time to go to this country. And so we keep honoring that step by step, moment by moment. That's the real beauty and peace available to us.
It really is. And it's so beautiful that you brought it back to that, because when we do trust our own intuition, that's when you really know, like, do I still want to get an RV? Yes. would I still like to have a piece of property and have a garden? Yeah, but it's not from a place of lack or fear now. It's because that's really where, when I release all of that fear, that it's still in my heart going, oh, while I enjoy people, I also really like not being around people. I enjoy being in nature. I would adore to have a house on a lake and have a garden and be good at it, because I don't know if I have a green thumb. I've never really experimented with that. But an RV to travel around the world or at least the United States, and bring light that way. Absolutely.
Yes. And I feel that that's the key. Is it expansive? Does it make your heart open up, or does it feel like I have to do this because I'm running away or trying to protect myself? That's it, right?
Right.
And there's no wrong, really. It's just, where do you want to align to? And it feels a lot better to be in love and expand and make those dreams. So just let me know when you get that RV. That's pretty awesome.
Well, I'll tell you, yes, she is on the vision board. I have narrowed it down to the perfect one at this point in time. And I literally I was going on a ride the other day, and I said, you know what? I've got to go see this one in person. No lie, sitting at the red light. Here she comes. Goosebumps. And I was like, she is perfect.
That's how it goes.
That's how it goes. And I thought, okay, so I'm getting closer. So we're getting there.
Yes. I have a friend who calls it driftwood. And she says, like, when you see something, it's like in the beach, or, when wood comes by, it's showing you what's on its way to you. So there's your form of driftwood.
I love that. I know. I like to call them godwings, but I really like the driftwood. Being from Cape Cod, I like the driftwood.
Yeah, there you go. Both of them.
That's so amazing. Oh my goodness. So Shannon, we are getting to this time in the show where I ask this one pressing question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, girl. What is one thing that perhaps no one knows about Shannon Kaiser?
Ooh, such a good question. I'm laughing because there's so many layers. Well, something that no one knows, but I already shared it with you a little bit earlier, is that I am working on my next book. And literally, like, after we get off our call today, even though I just launched another book, I'm working on the kind of outline and proposal for that. It's a little too early to say what it's about, but as we were sharing before we got on, the return to you is really an encompassing and hug to the world. It is my teaching up to this point. So I will say the next book is very different than any of the books I've ever written, not in just the content, but the way it's written, the way it's laid out. And I can't wait to share it with you guys.
I have such goosebumps. I'm so excited. Yay. Oh my goodness. Something more to look forward to. Well, I still have plenty of time to read your book another 3 or 4 times. So
yes. Oh, I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we could share and connect today. This is so beautiful.
Me too. This was so amazing. Now, we did talk pre-show. We talked about you this year. It was in November, I believe. The Unshakable Inner Peace Oracle cards came out. And these are amazing and these are beautiful. And we talked about, we're actually, because they're so amazing, beautiful, we will give them their own separate podcast because there's so much to chat about with them. But we did talk about how I personally feel, as do you, how accurate they are. Every day I'm pulling one of these cards and they're just amazing, 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 amazing. Would you do us the honor of pulling a card for us today?
So I will say that Unshakable Inner Peace Oracle cards is really a sister companion to the book Return to You. We almost, with Sounds True, my publisher, we kind of almost thought about, that's why 11 Spiritual Lessons for Unshakable Inner Peace is the subtitle of Return to You in the book. The Oracle cards, I started to design. I left advertising and I was a designer, and I sat down to help with my own anxiety, designing these little collages, and I would print them out and they would help me each day. And then in meditation one day, it said, you need to make this an Oracle card deck. So this is the first kind of process that I have put out into the world that is both my graphic design. And I love these. I love that you feel their high vibes.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning. Like nothing I've ever seen or put in my hand before. The embellishments, the pictures, it's just... Oh,
thank you. Stunning. And then the messages that go with them are very key. They're the life truths that are shared throughout the book as well. But I just pulled one just now, and how you do Oracle cards, if you're, I'm sure a lot of people listening already are aware, but you just kind of set an intention. I just asked, what message do we need now today, universe, and the one that came forward is card number 8. And I call this crystal mountain card because it's a mountain of amethyst, and amethyst is all about manifesting. It's all about alignment. It's all about your true self. Lots of different layers there. But then this person is walking in the, it's not the maze, but
the labyrinth.
The labyrinth. Yeah. And so they're walking through the labyrinth. And in this position, we have the message, you heal by releasing, not suppressing. So this is our card about healing. And here you are, all about healing. And here we are talking about our healing journey. But the key here is, what emotion do you need to feel? And we have emotions that get stuck. And that's, again, there's a whole lesson in the book that's about feeling your emotions, because you do, as you know, and teach and share, they help us heal. And our emotions. We live in a world that says, don't feel, big girls don't cry, stop feeling. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, our emotions are a direct connection to our higher self and spiritual self. They guide us. So feel them. Let yourself feel.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you.
I love that.
Oh my gosh. So amazing. Now, Shannon, please share with our amazing Empowered Within community, where can they best get in contact with you?
Yes. So my website, playwiththeworld.com, you can actually take an intuition quiz. What is your intuition style? And that's also in the book. And my social media, Shannon Kaiser Writes, WRITES, for my author page on Facebook and Instagram. And the book, Return to You, is available anywhere and everywhere.
Yes. Shannon, thank you so much. This is truly such an honor. I mean, my heart is so full. My soul is so full today. I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing your incredible energies, your book, your oracle cards, and just your beautiful soul.
Thank you. It's been so great to connect with you. And I'm so happy that we came together today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Everyone, all of Shannon's information will be over on the show notes on jenniferpilates.com. So you can head over there and check everything out. And as we say, until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.